It's you again.
Oh, God.
What's wrong?
I thought I got rid of you.
Bad penny time. Bad penny time strikes again. I thought you were out of the country, but here you are again. Absolutely. How have you been?
I've been really good, thank you. I have not been traveling this last week, which is wonderful. And a friend and I have decided to set up a little antique shop, which is a new project. And it's been really good fun. We've been like sourcing items for it at different auctions. And we've had a good first month, I have to say. We've actually made some money, Lembit, which is a nice bonus. I know.
That's the last thing you need. I can give you some antiques. My clothes.
No. We have a kind of a style behind our antiques. They have to be at least fashionable and have a certain value, Lembit. So I'll pass if it's okay with you.
War on want for me then. Welcome if you're watching. I'm Lembit Öpik, if you didn't know that already. And this gentleman here is
Mark Oaten, and you definitely didn't know that already. So it's good to be able to remind you.
And welcome to Lib and Lep Die, the last vestige of the good old days of the Liberal Democrats, replaced now by this wet conservative blancmange vanilla sky excuse of a party, which Mark Oaten's still a member of.
What on earth was that all about? I thought we were going to talk about the Tory party conference this week.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, what's the difference between the Tories and the Lib Dems?
Oh, for goodness sake, come on. I mean, one party's got 72 seats and is on the way up. The other party is on the way out.
The other party's got 115 seats or something. So it's still bigger than the Lib Dems.
You wouldn't know it. And that's one of the problems that their leader has got as they enter into the last few days of their party conference.
Well, if we want to talk about that, then we better talk about the Green Party. They call themselves a party. We got to talk about them.
It looks like you've been taking their policies on board, Lembit, from the way you just reacted there, because they're obviously been pushing the fact they're in favour of taking drugs, and that is why your voice went all very peculiar and very high.
It's the only policy. It's the only policy I agree with them on, actually. Then, rather more seriously, this Manchester attack that occurred recently, where some horrible scum who actually got shot dead killed people by the looks of it for the sake of their religion. I think the Labour Party's made an enormous mistake on that. We'll explain that later. As has Gary Neville. Have you seen what he's been talking about?
I'm with Gary Neville on this. I mean, I didn't support him as a footballer, but I do think that he is coming in and speaking some good plain sense. And what I like about Gary Neville, and we can talk about it a little bit later on, is that he is talking the kind of language that the right talk, but he's talking it from a perspective of the left. I like what he's doing.
Of course you'd agree with Gary Neville, because I don't. You're so contrary these days. If I'd said I was in favour of Gary Neville, you'd have said you're against it.
All right, well, here's the controversial one. What about Tony Blair's appointment to oversee the peace process and the rebuilding of Gaza? We need to talk about that. And finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about our future king, Prince William. I don't know if you saw it, Lembit. He gave a wide-ranging interview setting out what a William monarchy would look like.
E-bike-tastic. Yeah, scooter-tastic. Not the look I want from my monarch, but there we go. And I'm a royalist. And I suppose you're going to want to talk about television, because you, as a man of leisure, have got the time to watch it.
I have a great one this week, which everybody will have heard of. And it's not at all controversial, but it features one of the most disgusting, repulsive characters on television, who at the same time is lovable.
Oh, it's a documentary about the Lib Dem conference, then.
Oh, fine. I set you up beautifully for that, didn't I, Lemon? And what just keeps us a little bit with your one, then.
Well, I'll give you a clue. It's all about rather dubious escapes. You'll see about that later. The actor that we've discussed before, actually, on our show. But you'll have to find out the rest later. I'll be interested to know if you know the show. It was one of those late nights when I came across a box set and I watched the lot. It was pretty good. I suppose we better start with the other great drama, somebody say comic drama, which is the Tory party conference, which has been just everything that you would expect it to be, which is pretty much nothing. Somebody described it to me as a bicycle without a chain, basically, pedaling hard and going nowhere. I mean, here it is, Tory conference branded like a wake with rows of empty seats at Key Speech. And I think I'll just carry on with this one. Mel Stride made one of the key speeches. Look at that. Look at it. it's even the Lib Dems are more popular than that in their worst days. It's unbelievable. Isn't it?
That is, those images are extraordinary, and it speaks volumes. And as you say, it does remind you a little bit of the days when the Lib Dems were struggling. But that image says it all. And that's what the green benches on the Tory side in Palms are going to look like in a few years' time as well. I mean, it really is a symbol for the problems they've got.
Yeah, one health warning. That could have been 10 a.m. on Sunday morning after a heavy night. So it's possible that they were very selective when they took it. You could just about take photographs like that at any conference if you chose the right moment. And it'll be Amendment 4 on the washing and draining board sustainability bill or something, or the party's view on custard or something. And then
that's a very, very important issue for many people in this country, and I'm surprised you're belittling it in that way.
Anything custard, yellow, you're in favour. Anything yellow,
exactly.
Just like the Lib Dems and their courage.
You're a cold or you're a hot custard? Do you like take it hot or cold, Lembit?
Well, if it's made at home, it's got to be bird's eye and it's got to be hot. If I buy it in a tin, ambrosia, you can eat that cold.
The perfect answer. If I'm in a restaurant and I've got a hot pudding, I like it cold on top. But it normally shocks the waiter or waitress, I have to say, when I do that.
So we agree. I'm sure you do shock the waitress towards the end of the evening. But it's interesting. We agree with the dessert, but the starter is still rather tart, which is the Tory conference. Are they really as bad as it seems? Because I have to tell you, I've been to Tory conferences and various fringes. You probably did the same thing from time to time. And it used to be buzzing. It used to be old, but it used to be buzzing. It seems to me they've absolutely fallen to bits. In fact, very recently, the lady who stood for the Conservatives in an area near me, she just announced she's just defected to Reform. She would have won if it hadn't been for Reform, because Reform ate so much of the Tory vote, the Lib Dems got in. But she's actually left the Tories. You hear this right, left and centre. Somebody I know, Keith Prince, who is actually a Greater London Assembly member, has joined Reform. And that means they're a group of two, but a group. Now, he had a pretty promising career in the Tories, but he's left. It does seem to me that this conference is just irretrievably difficult. It is like a wake.
I mean, look, I think it says it all that we actually ended up preferring to talk about custard than we did for the Conservative Party conference. But they do struggle also, and they've always struggled from this, that they are the last conference in the season. So by the time the journalists have dragged themselves around from Lib Dems, Green, Reform and Labour, and they get to the Tories, they're completely hungover, completely exhausted. There's a really grumpy press pack. And it's always difficult to be the last conference. But as you say, Lembit, this one has been particularly bad. And I think that this could very well be the last conference that Kemi is leader for. Because as I understand it, the rules mean that you can't challenge her until she's been leader for a certain period of time. But by mid-November, it would be possible to submit letters in to the chairman of the 1922 committee. And as our listeners and viewers will know, that is the trigger for a leadership election. I didn't think it would be possible. This could get so bad, but I think it is going to be this bad. The only thing that could possibly save her, in my view, is that any potential contenders would rather that she takes the hit for next May local election defeats and that she goes then rather than now.
I actually don't think almost anyone in the country, and most of the Tory party, knows that what the 1922 committee is. But okay, that's fair enough. You're overestimating the level of interest I think the average person has with the minutiae of how the Tories work. But the point you're making is right. There is a system which is really involving the MPs. Doesn't involve anybody else, just the members of Parliament. And if they've had enough of her, they can get her out really easily. They got rid of the unsinkable Margaret Thatcher doing that. I have to say, I like Kemi Badenoch as a person. You still don't say her name right, by the way. It's Badenoch, not Badenoch. 1D, it's a pedantic point, but why is it not pedantic on that basis? But moving on from that, the fact is that she's a likable person, but she comes across as a reasonably good sixth form debater. She does not come across as a leader of a party, and she doesn't come across as prime minister. But the main problem she's got is she has an unfloatable. She might be unsinkable herself in a way, but she's got an unfloatable Tory party. It's not that it's sinking; it's just stuck on the rocks, and the tide's gone out, and it just sits there with the propellers spinning and nobody wanting to board.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to carry on the analogy that you could argue that changing the leader is like changing the deck chairs on the top of the Titanic, for sure. And I think that the problem that they have is much more than the leader. It is fundamentally, it feels to me like one of those points in history where a party genuinely could disappear. And, we've seen this happen maybe every 100 years or so, that a party comes to a point where it has just run out of its purpose of being. And I think the Tory party has got to that point now.
There's danger there, and let's not divert into reform too much. But then the obvious thing will happen. They'll all go into reform, and reform becomes Tory 2.0. Now, I've talked about that with reform before, and I don't think they fully understand the danger here. The danger is exactly what Nick Clegg did to the Lib Dems. He materially changed the character of the party by putting his own people in. And I know you were part of what used to be called the Orange Book. Nobody's going to remember what that is either. But there was this group that changed the way that Lib Dems worked, and ultimately led to disaster. I think that there's danger that the Tories, and I do think they've run aground. No one's really sinking, but they can walk off there onto the good ship reform. And if they all get onto the good ship reform, they virtually constitute the new crew. And I think that Nigel Farage's got to be careful there. It's called entryism. It's got a name. And if they all go across, then we got this new Tory party. And let's say 100 of the Tory MPs said, right, Conservatives are over, we're all going to reform. Then Nigel Farage has got a problem, not least because the public will twig that this is actually an old wolf wolf in sheep's clothing.
I think you're absolutely right, but I think Farage is smarter than that. I think he sees that risk, and that's why he would probably end up saying no to a few individuals. He's made it very clear, for example, that Boris Johnson wouldn't be welcome in reform. He knows acutely that if he's going to take votes off Labour as well, which is really important to him, then reform must not be seen as just a new Conservative party. But also, I think that some of those some of those Conservative MPs or some of those Conservative voters, for sure, are not going to want to rush to reform. I think the Lib Dems will also be the beneficiary of some of them coming over, because the Conservative Party, as you know, is split. And those on the right will be tempted with reform, but those Ken Clarke kind of moderate pro-European Conservatives, they must be looking for a home now. And that home is not reform, it's not Labour. That should be the Lib Dems that they go to.
Well, yeah, I think actually I agree with you on that. I think that there's a good chance that that's exactly what's going to happen. I don't see anyone really going across from Tory to Labour, but they'll go to reform and they might go to the Lib Dems. That's to some extent what happened, but let's not oversell this. The Lib Dem vote wasn't good in the 2024 election. The result was good, but the vote wasn't. They actually came behind reform. And I just don't really see there's any comparison between what Farage is offering and what Ed Davey's offering. Farage is offering a serious attempt at sorting out our borders, a serious attempt at scrapping net zero, a serious attempt at making Brexit work. The Lib Dems offer the opposite of all those three, and Joey the Clown is the leader.
Yeah, but if you think of yourself from the perspective of a Conservative Party member who has been on the moderate side of the Conservative Party, you see your party disappearing, but you don't want to join reform. So where else do you go? You are homeless to some extent. So that's why I think that the Lib Dems will pick up some of those. But one thing we can probably both definitely agree on is that none of those Conservative waverers will be going to the Green Party, particularly after the party conference that they had this week. I mean, it was this Polanski, who's the new charismatic leader. I think he ran into the conference, did he? Maybe he's trying to give Ed Davey a good run for gimmicks and stuff like that. But then, of course, they came out with what is going to be a vote-losing policy for many people, and that is legalizing virtually every single drug that you can get your hands on, as far as I can tell.
That's about the only policy that I've been sympathetic to. Maybe my view is a bit different now I've got children. But certainly if you'd asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd have said legalize and regulate. That's still what I would do. I would say you can't ban addiction with a law, because addiction isn't something which you can prescribe or unprescribe by punishment. That's by the definition of it. An addiction. An addiction does you harm, and you don't really care about the harm because you just can't resist it. So I would be, ironically, inclined to say we could legalize and regulate drugs, because then the bottom falls out of the illegal market. What makes pushers push is that once they get you hooked, then they're also your customer. If, on the other hand, you're addicted and you can get heroin on prescription, as was possible in this country till around 1973, Misuse of Drugs Act, then the market declines. There were only about 2,500 recorded heroin addicts in 1973. Now there's something like 200,000 because we've created a market. That's the irony about it. But everything else they're doing is a massive joke. Polanski, he says, we welcome all the migrants. I haven't read the memo, pal. That's not going to get you a lot of votes. That means Reform's not going to vote for them. The Tories aren't going to vote for them. No, Labour's going to vote for them. Maybe some Lib Dems will vote for them on both of those policies. And then its whole attitude, it's gratingly superficial. I think somebody I know would describe him as having a shallow consciousness. Does he persuade you?
No, I'm not persuaded, but I think that there may be an interesting group of the electorate that you're forgetting, Lembit. At the next election, 16-year-olds will be able to vote for the first time ever. That actually means that out there, 13-year-olds now are going to be targeted by politicians, because by the next election, they'll be 16 and able to vote. So I suspect that the Greens have had a really strong pitch towards those 16-year-old voters and to student voters as well. And that's where perhaps this drug policy will...
Yeah, that's very patronizing, though. You know that... yes, I think so. I understand, and you can see it if you ever go to a pub. If you can afford to go to a pub, I can't. But if you go to a pub, you get fewer young people there. Drinking amongst young people's gone way down. I don't know what they're doing in terms of drugs, but I get the feeling that there are rather more clean living than our generation, so they won't look like us at our age. But once again, a lot of them are going to reform.
That is also true as well. But where are the Green voters going to come from then? And it does seem that he has to pitch at that younger demographic. By saying that he's going to legalize drugs, saying he's going to welcome more migrants, he certainly is going to be alienating the over 50-year-old vote, that's for sure. So I think his pitch is towards those younger people. But just on the drugs issue, I think I've changed my mind on this one. Last week, I confessed to changing my mind on ID cards. I used to be in favor of legalizing drugs. In fact, the Lib Dems back in Paddy Ashdown's day had it as a policy. I remember the press headlines after he introduced it. It was Paddy's party goes to pot. And it did us huge damage at the time. Look, I think it's an oversimplification to say that if you regulate and you have a system in place that means that it is acceptable, you get rid of the pushers, you get rid of the black market. I'm not entirely convinced of that anymore. I think what you do is you make it acceptable. And just as we have had with cigarettes and tobacco, for example, which is legalized, you've created a black market, which is huge for individuals still trying to get cheaper cigarettes. And there's a lot of crime connected with that. I can see the same thing still happening if you legalize drugs. There would still be people undercutting the market, and you'd still have that black market and that dangerous link to gangs and to crime, which is linked to those people selling drugs.
Yeah, to paraphrase a Labour comment about the Lib Dems in the Oldham by-election, you're soft on freedom and high on authoritarianism. That's your problem now. You become some sort of a conservative junkie when it comes to this. I remember the days when you used to be, these two words you may not remember, a liberal Democrat. But like your party, you've walked away from it all now. So, well, now I think, young people are too stupid to do this. So, I suppose you wouldn't give young people the 16-year-old vote either now, because honestly, if they can't judge on drugs, why would you let them judge on who's going to run the country? Which is pretty smart if you think about it, because I think a lot of the 16, 17-year-olds are going to reform. But the fundamental point I've got here about the Greens is, it's really ironic. I'm arguing for the Green policy on drugs and you're arguing against it. But the fundamental problem is, on everything else, they're screwball. They want to ban flying, essentially, or close to it. They want to ban large motorbikes. They want to ban all kinds of things which are just normal life. And it's a weird thing. They don't have any limit on how many children you can have. Anytime I meet a Green voter who has 3 children or more, I say, but you're creating the biggest pollution there is. More people. But they won't talk about that. And they thought, well, that's not right. It's a human right. Oh, it's a human right to have as many kids as you want, but woe betide the person who takes his family to Torremolinos for a week every summer. And what about little Greta Thunberg? She's got a fair number of air miles racked up there. She doesn't sail everywhere. This is the problem. The fundamental reason, and I have to tell you, in 1989, I thought about joining the Greens. And then I realized they're a pressure group. Yeah, it was between the Lib Dems and Greens. And Paddy Ashton convinced me to join the Lib Dems. And at that time, I thought, absolutely right decision. I've never regretted not joining the Greens because I realized in 1989, at the tender age of 24, that they were just a pressure group, single issue pressure group. Now, to their credit, they have wagged the dog of the entire Western political world, but they've wrecked it too because there is no climate emergency. Did you know that all of the human emissions every year add 142,000th of CO2? That's the amount of CO2 of the atmosphere. All the CO2 is 142,000th of the atmosphere, and most of that's reabsorbed as well. And that's a fundamental thing. They talk utter drivel. They don't understand the science. And when you say things like that, they go, "Oh no, but there's a climate crisis." There's no climate crisis. You know, I saw an article on the television saying, "Oh yes, well, the Alps are losing their glaciers because of global warming." And then I saw another article saying the Antarctic is gaining ice because of global warming. I mean, it's ridiculous. Thank you. I feel I've had some counselling.
Is it over now? Is there any more?
I finished. I realised I went on a bit. I'll be quiet later.
If only this program wasn't recorded live, we could actually edit some of that rubbish out. But anyway, we have to keep plugging ahead and leave it in. On more serious notes than your blasting of the Green Party, the events in Manchester this...
Would you ever vote Green? Would you ever vote Green?
I've never voted Green, and I would never vote Green, no, because I believe in the politics has to be real. There are tough decisions that you have to make, and you have to be unpopular at times to achieve those things. And I don't think that the Greens understand sometimes the reality of running things, and we're seeing it in some of the councils that they run up and down the country as well.
I did vote Green once.
Really?
Yeah, in 1984 or 5 when I was an MP. It must have been 84. Not when I was an MP. So when I was a student. It was a local government vote, and I went to the place, and I was going to vote whatever the SDP alliance was at the time. And then what happened was I met the Green candidate. I thought, oh, he's really nice. I voted Green. One time. But at least I speak from authority. Go on.
Is this the only time you've not voted for the Lib Dems?
That's a different subject.
Okay. We will revisit that at some other time. But look, can we talk about
something much more painful?
Manchester? Horrible. At so many different levels, and I think that it was right that the country took note. I think it was right that the politicians made the comments that they did about what concerns me is the difference that we have in this country between understanding that you can be against what Israel is doing, but that doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic and you're against Jewish people. And they're two completely different things that are happening here. And I absolutely understand people want to protest against what's happening in Israel and the way the Israeli government are doing things. To muddle that up with these terrible attacks and assaults on Jewish people is just wrong. It's just wrong.
That's interesting. Absolutely. Once again, this is very rarely happens. I'm agreeing with you for a second time in the same show. I know that history. Note this day. There'll be a blue plaque on our studio after today. On this day, Mark Oaten Lembit Öpik actually agreed for the first time since 1997. But anyway, the reality here is the absolutely unforgivable stupidity of the Labour Party saying, well, you shouldn't be demonstrating in favor of Palestine because that's disrespectful to the Jews. Unbelievable. And why is it unbelievable? Exactly for what you said. Because when they say that, when who's in the picture there, Shabana, when she spoke, and we'll come to David Lammy in a minute, what she was saying was that opposing the problems Israel's causing in Palestine is like criticizing the Jews.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, unforgivable, because they're doing exactly the thing I say almost every single week on this station. Being a critic of Israel is not the same as being a critic or a slanderer of Judaism. Judaism is a religion. Israel is a country. It's like saying, well, if you opposed the illegal war launched by Tony Blair in Iraq, you must be anti-Catholic because Tony Blair's a Catholic. And what they've actually done is exactly what they said they didn't want. They're now saying you oppose the genocide in Palestine. You must be anti-Jewish because the Jews are doing it. And I can't believe we've got a government as irresponsible as to stir up exactly the religious hatred they say they don't want. And I find that unforgivable. Look at him, Starmer there. Say, I would ask them not to demonstrate in favor of Palestine because it's disrespectful to the Jews. Nothing to do with the Jews. Everything to do what you think about whether you like Israel or not. And it drove me crazy when I saw this, Mark.
Yeah, no, I think I totally agree. And it doesn't help when they misunderstand these two issues in this way. And what they're doing is fueling a hatred towards Jewish people, which I don't think they're doing it deliberately, but by default, they are encouraging that. And it's the wrong focus. It really, really is for doing that. Look, I mean, the other sad thing about what happened was, of course, two people lost their lives. And one of them lost their lives because the police shot that individual, albeit by trying to shoot the terrorist at the same time. Look, all round, it's awful. Will it be the last time this happens? Sadly, I doubt it will, and we will have to wait and see what happens next. But yeah, horrible events in Manchester.
Just one word on it, though. That man there, David Lammy, showed his complete idiocy by going on about his pre-prepared speech when he was being heckled. Why was he being heckled? Because the community there, presumably the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, doesn't matter if they're Jews or not, doesn't matter. Pro-Israel, pro-Zionist community were shouting at him, how dare you, as a party, recognize Palestine? So a lot of people feel strongly about it. We're not going into that, what you and I think about it. I bet you we disagree, but we'll see. Maybe not. And he, instead of saying what he should have said, I'll say in a minute, he just read this anodyne, inappropriate, badly phrased, insensitive speech, which didn't even slightly reflect the feelings in the audience. What he should have said is, I know a lot of people feel very strongly about decisions made by the Labour government. I'm willing to discuss that. But for the next 20 minutes, we're here to remember the dead. And whatever you think about the politics, let's respect the honour of two people who never deserved this. And perhaps we can grieve and honour them together. If he'd said that, the heckling would have stopped. But he was too stupid to do it.
He didn't read the room at all. But equally, I didn't think it was appropriate that he was booed and chanted it in the way that he was either on the other side. I wonder whether, with hindsight, it was perhaps the wrong decision for all the politicians to suddenly flood to Manchester in the way they did. You had Andy Burnham, even Angela Rayner, Lucy Powell, David Lammy, the Home Secretary, Keir Starmer, half the cabinet were there. Was that maybe an overreaction? Should Keir Starmer have actually flown back from his conference in Denmark? It's a difficult one because the politicians are so scared not to be seen to be reacting, but actually maybe their extreme reaction on this occasion wasn't appropriate in the community that they went to try and support.
Yeah, but my view, Mark, is that Keir Starmer's response was anodyne and pointless, but probably neutral. Sending Lammy there was a huge mistake because he just doesn't have the mental agility to cope with it. I mean that literally, not just poking fun at him. That's what I think. In fairness to Angela Rayner, who I have very little respect for, she is a Manchester MP. And so I think she was entitled to be there. Andy Burnham, he had to be there. So my problem is all these other people freeloading their way up to look like they cared. I just think it was rather transparent. And why? Because of the total mixed messages of Keir Starmer. For 2 years, Israel's got a right to defend itself. And then suddenly, but I'm going to recognize Palestine. It's exactly the opposite. He's actually given a completely U-turn type message. And that's why they were heckling Lammy. Well, but he could have got away with it by saying, this isn't the time or the place. I'll stay here as long as you like and talk about it. But please, let's spend the next half hour honoring the dead.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. And we'll come on to Palestine after the break. But before we go to the break, I mean, there's obviously a very, very heated atmosphere about protests at the moment. Where do you stand on this? Because I imagine you're with me that you want to defend the right of individuals to be able to protest. That said, the police have got a valid point about the fact their resources are hugely stretched in actually having to police these protests.
I absolutely support the right of these people to protest. I haven't got much time for Palestine Action, or whatever they're called. They cause millions of pounds worth of pointless damage to an aircraft. Who's paid for that? We do. We pay for that. It's a bit like the Just Stop Oil people. They don't really win friends by damaging state-owned property, taxpayer-owned property. But notwithstanding that, if I was Home Secretary, I'd say whether I agree with you or not isn't the point. Demonstrate, but here's the quid pro quo. Here's the deal. Don't hurt people, don't harm property. You can inconvenience people, but don't harm people. Don't hurt people, don't harm property. And then you can do what you like. And if somebody said, do you agree with the Palestine Action people? Saying, personally, no, don't. I don't. But they shouldn't be a terrorist prescribed organization any more than Just Stop Oil should be. They're just indulge in criminal behavior, and they should be treated like that. And what I think has happened, Mark, is lots of middle class, well-meaning people who live in posh parts of London and elsewhere, they turn up now. They say this just isn't right, because there's a fundamental sense of decency in the British population. They're reasonable people, and they see this is totally unreasonable. And here's the irony. Here's that horrible irony, which you may or may not know. But the Home Secretary, Ms. Shabana, she's the one who's saying, oh, we've got to increase powers for cumulative impact. In other words, if you cause trouble and inconvenience, then the police have the right to ban you. Hold on a minute. If you go onto the internet, you'll find same Shabana campaigning on, wait for it, a pro-Palestine demonstration outside Sainsbury's, where she lay down, causing inconvenience for other people, or at least trying to, in 2014. So, in other words, she should arrest herself. This is the horrible irony. What did she think was going to happen? 11 years later, everybody would forget about it. That's the difficulty I've got with these clowns.
I think that, again, you and I will both agree that while sometimes we have to support uncomfortable causes because we believe in the freedom of expression, we believe in the freedom of protest, it seems to me that this Labour government wants to clamp down on it, and they don't believe in that. And actually, I think that is dangerous, because you build up more and more resentment, and it leads individuals to take more illegal activity if they haven't got the ability to protest peacefully. So I think on this we're in agreement. But just final comment around all of this. Gary Neville has stepped into quite a bit of this debate in the last couple of days. Interesting, because the former football player turned pundit has made some quite strong comments, for example, about the fact that he's describing white, middle-aged, angry men as being the reason why so many flags have been put up. And what I think is interesting about Neville is that he is speaking very directly to a lot of followers, but he's coming at it from a perspective of being on the left of British politics. And he's articulating some of these things in the kind of controversial way that Nigel Farage would do from the right of politics. I quite like the way that Neville's going about this.
Oh, no. You cannot be serious.
Another sporting analogy. But anyway, go on.
I have been absolutely appalled by his embarrassing monologue. As you rightly say, Gary Neville saying that he didn't like angry, white, middle-aged men who are putting up these flags. He doesn't. He said he doesn't see the point of why they're putting them up now. Now, I was talking about the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, a moment ago, Now, at least she's a politician. Not a very good one, but she's a politician. This guy spent 20 years being a professional footballer. Now he can preach about middle-aged white men. That's self-loathing. That's what he is. He's been. I'm just on a ride. I don't know what. Maybe I shouldn't have gone to the Green Party conference. That's what's happening. No, just kidding, everyone, kidding, officer. Basically, he's a professional footballer for 20 years. I've been a professional politician like you for 40 years. That means, by his logic, I am twice as entitled to preach to him about football than he is to preach to me about politics, Mark.
Look, I've argued that the left needs to start to express itself in the ways in which the right does. So actually having somebody like Gary Neville, who talks in this way directly to lots and lots of followers, not just Manchester United fans, but people that watch him on Sky Sports and other channels, is exactly the kind of figurehead that the left need. Because this guy, whether you like it or not, is much more articulate than our prime minister, is much more articulate than most of the cabinet are, and has a way of reaching out. So actually, I think that Neville is good. I think he could be a politician. I mean, why are you laughing, Lembit? Why are you go on then?
You're ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. The guy's a good communicator. He can get a message across.
He's talking out of his backside. He's criticizing himself. He's an angry white middle-aged man who knows pretty much nothing about politics. To use a football analogy, when it comes to political goalkeeping, he's completely offside. I mean, the guy doesn't even know. He just doesn't know what he's talking about. Also, you're
scoring an own goal here because Neville is now a successful businessman. He does know and understand what the real world is. Some of the projects and the things which you get involved in are very community-based. He's seen how you can turn poverty around in some of his projects. Listen to what the guy does. He's not a one-trick pony.
He's trying to keep the red flag flying here, but instead I'd give him the red card.
Well, the flag he wants to tear down is certainly not red. It's red, white, and blue.
Yeah, but the point here, right? He says, oh, he doesn't see the point of why these flags are going on now. He's one of the very few people in Britain who used to wear the flag. He used to wear it as his uniform when he was representing Britain. And he doesn't see why some of the rest of us might want to put them on flagpoles. You go to America and you see the stars and stripes all over the place on flagpoles. You've been there and they're proud. Gary Neville really provoked me. He's barely more intelligent than David Lammy. If he carries on like this, he's going to end up on the Labour cabinet.
You are such an intellectual snob. Every single program, you go on about the intelligence of our politicians, and that's just not right. The politicians are not just about whether they've got academic qualifications, and you belittle people like Gary Neville and others just simply because they haven't got the kind of qualifications you expect from politicians. Listen,
they belittle themselves by the stupid things they say.
Our producer,
that's what's wrong.
Our producer is saying that we are well beyond extra time and we need to take a break. Go and have a suck on an orange or something else, and we'll come back and discuss Palestine after this break, okay?
Okay. Hello, I'm Basil Valentine, and this is Unprecedented TV, unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented, the home of free speech here on the internet. Do please like and subscribe over at YouTube. Follow us on X, and remember, I'm on air every day, Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. for Ascending Order, your daily news edit with live guests and all the genuinely most important stories from around the world. Don't allow yourself to be propagandized by the corporate media. Forget the world at one on Radio 4. Join me, Basil Valentine, instead, 1 p.m. on X, Monday to Friday, also on YouTube. And I'll see you all very soon.
Right, Lembit.
That Basil Valentine stream, all right? Did you see where he lives?
Yeah, he's got a nice book collection. Mine's all falling around. Actually, I've got my books on a pair of old skis, which I thought was a really, really cool idea. And yeah, exactly. It didn't work.
This is the view from my window.
Yeah. Have you calmed down now during our little break there? Because you were getting rather.
As long as you don't raise another really provocative person, I should make it to the end of the show. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Tony Blair then.
No.
What am I doing to you? I'm killing you. Look, we need to talk Tony Blair.
Serious.
Let's have a little look.
We're really talking about him, are we now?
Well, we're not the ones
joking about that earlier on.
Donald Trump is talking about him. I think that we've got some clips of Donald Trump actually saying why he thinks that Blair should be the guy to run the task force, which is going to be looking at the future for Gaza.
This is eternity.
Make me more angry if you have to listen to him. Oh, we do.
Forever.
Okay.
To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others, and they'll be named.
I mean, honestly, it is laughable, and it's a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, and I'm too busy to do it, but I'm still going to do it. I mean, it's incredible. However, having said that, fair dues, he's got to this point, he's brokered the peace, and he's got closest to anybody has in the last 2 or 3 years to being able to get to this point where we could see a possible outcome which will result in a settlement and a resolution to this terrible conflict. But for me, I think it's genius to bring back Blair. I have no issues with Tony Blair. I think that he's an outstanding politician. I'm surprised he wants to do it because it's an incredibly difficult situation to take on. But I suspect he wants to do it because he's still terribly obsessed by history. He's obsessed by his legacy. He knows that the legacy that he has is all around Iraq, and he is desperate to try and finish his political career with something which other people can say he did well. And that's why he would love to be able to help in this beautiful coalition of peace. You disagree, don't you? Which bit do you disagree on, Lembit? Trump or Blair?
All of it.
All of it.
All of what you said about Blair. I actually think Donald J. Trump is the right person to head this up because he actually made Benjamin Netanyahu in the headmaster's office, the Oval Office, pick up the phone and phone Qatar and say, "I'm very sorry for bombing your country." Did you know that? He did that. He made Netanyahu phone Qatar in front of him. It's like phoning another schoolboy who you were bullying. I'm sorry. That's wonderful. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful thing. But Blair, I mean, look, the little weapons of mass destruction now. So that's turning into Ed Miliband now. Never mind that. The point about it is he is going to go in there, as you actually agree with one thing. He's desperate to redeem his wretched soul from the lies that led us, and he knew they were lies that led us, you and me, to vote against him because we were both MPs at the time, to be pariahed, to be accused of lack of patriotism, and then we were proved completely right. Blair will never live that down. Now, he might be a bit more popular if he wasn't also agreeing with the dreadful ID cards, which I know you agree with as well. Maybe that's why you've been hoodwinked into thinking Blair's a good person here. But he's got a miserable record when it comes to peace. And now, I don't dislike him as a person. I actually always got on well with him. But I'm not playing the man and playing the ball here. I would not put him in because I think he's authoritarian. And I just don't feel he's got that touch. Who would I put in? If we only had someone like Mo Molam, Paddy Ashdown, someone like that, actually, although it would never be palatable to Israel, Jeremy Corbyn, because at least he's got a soul. But the problem with him is he's a bit too one-sided, people would say, and therefore he wouldn't have mutual respect.
You have finally lost the bloody plot. if you're actually saying that Jeremy Corbyn will be better at resolving the situation in the Middle East compared to Tony Blair, you have lost the plot completely.
Okay, so you think that Jeremy Corbyn? Sorry.
No. I would love you to dig the grave even deeper.
All right, carrying on. But for whom? The point is, Jeremy Corbyn would be palatable to the Palestinian side, but very problematic to Israel. But I think Tony Blair's equally palatable to Israel, but not palatable. I accept that. But that wasn't the point I was making. It's a question of empathy. I don't think Blair gets it. And that's the difficult. Mo Molan would have got it. She'd have gone on well with both sides. There's a guy called George Mitchell. He's not very well known. He would have been good at both sides. Bill Clinton would have been good because whatever he was getting up to in the Oval Office, he was a pretty good negotiator. I just don't think Blair can carry it across both sides. Now, on the one point, you make a fair point, actually, about Corbyn. He doesn't appeal to both sides, but nor does Blair. We need somebody who can talk to both sides, and they're very short supply at the moment because we've got a complete deficit of decent politicians.
I think it's interesting that, Trump, I think, has done a great job getting it to this stage, but I don't see him as being a finisher. I think that once he's said, right, okay, I've got a peace process in place, I've got this board of peace, he moves on, his mind moves on. It's a box ticked. He's not got the level of detail that is required to be able to see this through, to have the level of concentration to see this through. I think that by bringing in somebody like Blair, who desperately needs it, who's not got much else to do at the moment, you will have somebody of intellect and of detail. And let's not forget that Blair is also able to call on a lot of other former world leaders. He's got a great connection with other individuals around the globe. And it may very well be that he can bring together the kind of people that can talk to both sides. So look, I think it's a good announcement from Trump. I think it's a good breakthrough. And I think it's a good thing that Blair is going to be there. The jury, however, remains very much out as to whether this can last. You know, we've seen a few false dawns before, and we know how strong feelings are running on both sides on this issue. So, you know, whoever takes it on, whether it's Blair or somebody else, we wish them the best of luck.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. There's much more to say here, but we are kind of close to the limit and time-wise. I would simply say the problem with Blair is he's not palatable to both sides. And in fairness, nor is Corbyn. But we should, if only, be able to have a time machine and get somebody like Nelson Mandela or those other people I mentioned. We have such a shortage of truly great statesmen. And that, I think, is really harming the world.
I mean, that leads us nicely on to a statesman in the making, Prince William, who I don't know if you saw it, Lembit, but in the last week or so has given one of his most open interviews yet to the star of Schitt's Creek, as it happens. But it was an interesting interview because he started to touch on what kind of king, what kind of monarch he would be. And this is a really difficult balancing act, because of course when you say, well, I want to do this, I want to do that in the future, you're immediately going to be accused of saying, so you're currently saying that the current king and your dad has got it wrong. It's a balancing act, but I think he pulled it off beautifully by saying, look, he's still very committed to the institution of the coronation and those various pageantry things that you see with the monarch, but also setting out, look at what I'm doing now, look at how I've taken on the estates and the work that my father used to do when he was Prince of Wales. See how I operate. I have a WhatsApp group. You know, I'm very accessible. I think it was a good interview. Interestingly, he did also mention the H word, Harry. He said it very briefly, but he said it once. And the fact that he actually uttered it is being seen by some as the beginnings of a thawing in that very, very frosty relationship. Are you where are you on the monarchy? I see. You actually and I went to Highgrove once, and you introduced me to Prince Charles. Yeah. I seem to remember that, and I seem to remember that the now Queen had a cold, and we were in Highgrove, weren't we?
Yeah, Highgrove. Yeah, we were. I introduced you. I know King Charles as it is. I'm a monarchist. I think that they are a great institution. They get lambasted and criticized all the time. Probably unprecedented TV viewers say, how dare you? You should be a Republican. I'm a monarchist for pragmatic reasons. They are a very good ambassadorial operation. And whatever the intrigues behind closed doors in Buckingham Palace, they don't affect me. What does affect me is the fact that they present positively around the world. And I think King Charles is very, very good at that. And I have a lot of respect for him personally. I don't agree with his views on climate, but that's the policy distinction. In terms of the man, he sacrificed his entire life to public life. Oh, he's rich, you say. He's a prisoner. He's a prisoner. Always will be for the whole of his life. And whatever criticisms you make of him, I find him to be a good and honourable soul. And
look, he played a blinder with Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago, which can't have been easy. And he rolled out the red carpet and more. That has done us huge favors in keeping that special relationship going. So I'm with you. I'm a great monarchist, but I also look forward to a time when the monarchy can evolve and develop. And I think that in Prince William and in Catherine, the monarchy is safe for the future. And that's something we couldn't have been that sure about maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
I would say I like where King Charles has taken it. I like Charles III and where he is with it. He's quite political, but he's a bit more discreet about it than he used to be, and he has to be. In terms of where William takes it, well, he has to sound like he's progressive. They always have to say that. I don't want them to be progressive. I want them to be old-fashioned. It's a tremendous honor for me that I have had this relationship with King Charles, and I'm a loyal subject, really. And when Prince William takes it over, he'll do okay as well. He has to get on with Harry. He has to, but I suspect that relationship will never really be the same again. Sibling rivalry, whatever's gone on there. It's not for me. I don't care really, because I'm more interested in what actually happens to the monarchy. And I'm glad to say the overwhelming majority of the British population still want the king, and long they might do that too.
Here. Totally agree. My God, we are agreeing an awful lot.
Not much. No, probably about 20% of the time. It just seems like a lot.
That's more than normal. That's more. Will we agree? Will we agree on our television choices? Let me try my one with you first. So I described it at the start of the program as probably one of the most disgusting, revolting, but lovable characters on British television. I am talking about Slow Horses and the man himself. There he is, sat in his chair, looking disgusting, hair unwashed, smoking a cigarette, farting all the time. An incredible character. Lamb is what he's known as. And he runs basically an alternative to the Secret Service and MI5. They are called Slow Horses. They're the people that have been thrown out of MI5 because they're just too incompetent. And they run this separate organization. And you know what? Time and time again, although they're meant to be the incompetent outsiders, they end up being the ones that actually solve the crime. And this character is absolutely fantastic. He doesn't give a damn. He tells his staff to fuck off, to leave the office. He farts in cars and says, you better wind the window down. He's an alcoholic. He eats a terrible diet, treats everybody incredibly badly. But we all seem to love him, and he gets away with it. Slow Horses, thoroughly recommend it. I think we're on season 5 now. It's just started season 5. They're dropping an episode each week. Have you seen it at all, Lembit?
No.
You heard?
I hadn't heard about it, but I do like Apple TV. You reminded me of something else I want to recommend the next time, not today's. And I want to thank you, because now we have to put the health warning at the beginning of the program because you used a bad word. There's now his editing for Moose. And there we go. Thank you.
It's fart. Well,
you said F off as well.
Well, he says it all the time in the program.
Yes, that's fine. That's the first time either of us has actually sworn properly on this show.
Anybody that tunes into a program with Mark Oaten Lembit Öpik on it have got to expect obscenity. I mean, for goodness sake.
No. Anybody who tunes in has got to expect to utter an obscenity. That's all the difference in the world. You can't hear what they're saying. They can hear what we're saying. Apologies if you're caught unawares by Mark's flipping toilet
filthy
mouth.
Filthy language. What's your program, Lembit? What's your program?
I came across this little gem made over a decade ago with David Tennant. He's back again in our hit list. And it's The Escape Artist. I knew very little about it. I'm not very keen on courtroom dramas. This is much more than that. The story is that man there is in competition with another lawyer to be top dog, to be regarded as the best. And they don't really care if the person's guilty or innocent. They just want to win whatever they do. But then it gets personal. And David Tennant gets into a rather difficult situation with a very, very nasty client. That's giving nothing away because you find out how nasty he is very early on in the show. And then it's pretty mesmerizing, really upsetting at times, frustrating, brutal. But it's very, very hard as Nail's watching. And that's what kept my attention. I watched the whole lot. It's actually in 2 parts, comes to about 3 hours. But afterwards, you're breathless.
I've actually written it down, Lembit. There you go. It's the first recommendation you've given that I have actually written down. It sounds really good. And I love David Tennant. He's an incredible actor. He can turn himself to so many different parts. I think he played Jimmy Savile in the recent drama.
I thought that was Steve Coogan. I thought did that.
Oh, that was Steve Coogan. You're absolutely right. And that's actually another program which is back this week, Alan Partridge. I absolutely love Alan Partridge. Maybe we'll put that on one of the programs next week. You remind me a little bit of Alan Partridge. Exactly. On that note, I suspect that, yes, our producer's saying it's Steve Coogan, not David Tennant. Although I did see David Tennant in Hamlet. Bloody brilliant in that. Anyway, on that note, we should probably wind up the program.
Not before we say, please do subscribe. If you like what you're watching here, what we're doing, please subscribe to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything at this time. And then you get access to everything and you will love it. And it gives you notifications and everything else. And tell us if you want to see other things and tell us if you want some subjects as well. We are interactive, free speech and all that. But please, please, please subscribe to Unprecedented TV on YouTube.
And follow me on X, for goodness sake. Every time I put an episode out of this, I lose followers. I mean, what on earth is going on? I'm blaming Lembit for that. Follow me on
liberal, because they're libertarians. They were all me. They were all me.
Lovely seeing you, Lembit. I'll see you next week when I'm sure there's loads more to talk about.
Absolutely. And thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. It's unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented. I'm Lembit Öpik.
And I was Mark Oaten.
See you soon.